name is Sam, and this is my first ever YouTube video, so let's see how this goes. Today I just kind of wanted to show you what my home pottery studio looks like, how I've set it up. And as a renter, you need it to be very renter friendly. There's a few things I don't have, but you know, we'll get there someday. And as a beginner, there's a lot of things that you don't necessarily need right away. You can use what you already have, and then you can also just kind of like you build up as you go. This is by no means everything. I could have a lot more, you can do with a lot less, and just, you know, figure out what works for you. First off, I started on an Amazon wheel, the like $100, $200 one. The last 2 or so years when I first got that wheel, and what it's evolved to now. I'm excited to show you guys my setup and everything that I have so far. And if you are a fellow potter and you have any tips, I would love to hear them. I found a lot of this stuff actually through other like home potters, YouTube, Instagram videos as I was doing research, because I'm mostly self-taught. We're gonna start with my wheel. I just upgraded to a new big girl wheel, as I like to call it. It's gonna last me literally forever. It was definitely an investment, but where I'm going with this, it was definitely worth it. Go over everything that's on this little rack. I got this rack at Home Depot. It was like $35. You have a rack at home, that's even better. So a lot of my stuff is actually like random thrift store finds or stuff we decided we didn't need anymore, and I've slowly started to upgrade. In this top shelf, I have basically all of my throwing tools. So I have these wooden tools, I have, you know, a sponge and some plastic rubber boys. Basically when I'm throwing, these all go down here. I stole this from the house one day and it's been mine in the studio ever since. That's basically for all of my slip and scrap clay. In this bottom shelf, I basically have all of my trimming tools. I have these little guys, I have a couple more in here. They're a little bit bigger, so they fit perfect in this bottom shelf. Next on the shelf, we have a bucket. We have my little batmate. This goes just directly on here. In this bucket, I have all of my clay that's ready to throw, and it's gonna be in a baggie. And then I have them pre-sized for exactly how big I need. And if it's a little bit harder clay, I'll sometimes also put a damp rag in there. This is super helpful. I fill it up with as many pieces as I think I'm gonna use that day. I also measure them out beforehand. They're exactly the size that I want, and I know how big I can throw. And if I mess up, they just go into this next bucket that we'll talk about, which is at the bottom. Basically what I do with this is anytime I have a mess up, all of those scraps go in here. And then when this is pretty full, it's still workable clay, so I don't want to go through the whole reclaim process. I'll throw this on a plaster bat for a day or two, let it air out a little bit, and then that's basically ready to throw again. I'll fill this up with my throwing water. That way it's down here, I can easily reach it and just put a little bit on when I need to. Also keep a wire tool here. I change out my throwing water almost every time because I also use it to like spot clean my tools that I've been using. So these will sit here. I'll grab them all when I'm done, scrape off what I want to, and then go in here, let them sit for a minute, and then sponge them all off and they're clean again. This is where I keep my filming stuff when I'm shooting small videos for Instagram, such as wheel throwing, trimming, all of that stuff. I keep a mirror here, which has been a huge game changer recently because then you can see your pots without having to do this weird like lean over. I'll keep my phone there for music, and then I'll keep a water bottle there just for easy access without getting completely destroyed by all the mud. The only complaint I have about this is there's 2 outlets in this entire garage, both of which are far away from where I have my wheel. An extension cord fixed that problem. I got another adapter so that I can have 3 things plugged in. So I normally have my wheel and my light plugged in, or if I'm using the drill, just that is plugged in. Same with the heat gun. I try not to have too many things connected to it because I don't want to blow a fuse. And then obviously there's no kiln here, but that's fine. There's a local studio that will fire pieces, and it costs me like $1 a piece with the size that I'm currently making, so it doesn't add a whole lot of cost. Over on this side where you can't see, I also keep a space heater and a fan, which are great for winter. winter or summer so that it's not too stuffy in here or freezing cold. Just make sure you turn them off. We're gonna go into, I think, what my work table looks like. So let me just set that all up. My boyfriend helped me build this through some plans that I found online for a clay working table. And it took us about one afternoon, and it was less than $100. I did wrap in canvas and they're all stapled in there, but I really liked the way it was easy to clean. It had a cool texture to it, and it keeps some of the dust and dirt down. There's another benefit of like removing the water from the clay when you're wedging it. So I thought that was going to be super helpful. I normally dry my bats on here, so I'll just leave them over here overnight if I've thrown a couple pieces on them, and then when they're done, they go back on my little shelf. One of the other really nice things about this table is that it has a bottom shelf as well, and so I have a bunch of storage down here without having to get a whole nother rack or a whole separate thing. So let's start with what I keep down here. I'll keep boxes for my travel to and from the clay store where I get everything fired. I'll keep clay down here that's not necessarily ready to be thrown. It could be fresh clay, it could be reclaimed clay, and I just need to size it out and wedge it into a little ball so that it's ready to throw. I have a plaster bat. This is great for that reclaim that's sitting in the throwing buckets, or even my super wet reclaimed clay. And then I keep all of my towels down here. I have clean ones and then dirty ones. One other thing I'll mention about using the canvas is I always make sure to wet it down at least a little bit, get it damp before I use it so that the clay dust isn't coming up. You need a lot of buckets when you get into pottery. I mean, just on my little shelf alone, I had 3 of them. So I'm gonna go into the other sort of buckets that I've had and why I have this system. Please ignore my socks and my shoes. So this is another plaster bat. I made both of those because I didn't want to spend $100 on shipping one. So we got plaster at the store, and my boyfriend helped me make that too. Thank you, YouTube. This one is where all of my throwing water goes after I've used it. Here I let it settle so that all the clay goes on the bottom, and then I'll dump the water into like one of these buckets. So like this. And then you can see how much clay is sitting at the bottom. Once that's settled, it goes into here, which is my wet reclaim bucket. And I also let that sit for a while. I'll remove any water. I will use this plasterboard and try to get some clay that's ready to use. This stuff is still pretty wet, so it's probably gonna need another day or 2 just in there. What I'll also do is move it from here to that other one so I can use this again on that really wet stuff. I don't know if any of that made sense. I might have to do a separate video on that. This last bucket over here is for any like dry reclaim and any of my trimmings. Mop bucket, you don't want to do any sweeping, and you don't want to do anything to really get the dust up in the air since it's so bad for you. It's nice to have extra buckets. I also will use these when I'm cleaning. And then this trash can has a little spout down here, and this basically has all of the water that's not good for reclaim. So I'll use like any water that I've used from glazes, my super deep cleaning water. When I'm mopping, I'll normally throw it out in the street. I don't let any of the clay go into my drain at home. And the nice thing about this spout, put this under here, let it go, and then when this is ready, I dump it out and get rid of it. Sorry, city sewer. Now we're gonna go on to my shelving that I have. This was super nice because it came it's built-in shelving that came with the house. This top shelf is basically all of my glazes, all of my painting stuff. So I have like old cups that I don't care about. I have all of my paintbrushes here. I have pretty much all things glaze. And then this next shelf is basically all of my pieces that are bone dry and ready to go to the kiln. My local studio actually is pretty quick with their firing, all considering. I like to wait until I have a certain amount of pieces before going. That way I'm not constantly there, although I'm definitely a regular at this point. They generally take about a week between the time that I give it to them and then the time that it's ready. And it's super nice because they just text me and they're like, hey, all of your pieces are ready, and then I can go pick them up after work or on the weekends, and then I can move on to the next step. And so once they have been fired for the first time, they'll be in the bisque stage. I do try to glaze them pretty quick after I get them because, again, it takes about a week before I'll see them again and see the finished product. They'll go into one of their boxes, and then I'll normally fill it up with like newspaper so that it travels well. Normally when I'm throwing pieces, I let them dry just on my work table, but I'm trying to be better about keeping that table cleaner, more organized. And so I have 2 trash bags here. These are all pieces that have been recently thrown that I still need to trim, or I want to do some carving with. Maybe they need a handle. The reason that I have 2 trash bags is this one, these pieces are much firmer and they're much closer to being ready to trim, or they're already trimmed and I just need to do some final touches to them. And so these guys I like to keep pretty closed. They can be closed like that and there's very little air going in. And then the other one, these pieces are much fresher. You'll see they still get fingerprints, so they're just not ready. And so these I can be a lot more intentional with. For this, I can leave a lot of openness and make sure all the pieces are getting dry. I just cover them a little bit more. And they're getting a little bit of airflow, but it's not as crazy, so they can dry a little bit slower. And then there's a bottom shelf that I don't know if you can see. This is basically a bunch of clay that unfortunately dried out, and it's different color from what I've been using. So I just haven't gotten back into these ones yet. There's that really nice red clay. Looks like this one fired. It's super pretty, but it's pretty groggy, so I haven't thrown with it because it hurts. So it's definitely more of a hand building clay for me personally. That's pretty much it for like my actual studio setup. Hopefully this helps someone that's a beginning potter, hobby potter, or someone looking to turn into a home studio setup. Something about being in the comfort of my home and being able to do this at literally any hour of the day. Now, I'm not a night owl or a morning person, so I'm generally in here after work. But I could be in here at 2 a.m. if I really wanted to. I still have a full-time job. This is a hobby for me, but I am hoping to sell some of my pieces this year and really get into just what it means to be a potter. Pottery should be accessible to everyone. I think that ceramics is a wonderful hobby, and you could say there's rules, there's safety things, but it's really about whatever works for you is what's gonna make you the best. I've learned a lot just in these last 2 years of what kind of process works for me, what I enjoy doing, what I don't enjoy doing, and I'm still learning a lot. I do consider myself mostly self-taught. I'm very excited to show that process and show just people what it means and why I make these pieces. Any tips that I would give if I haven't said these already is start small and start with what you have. You don't need all of this to be successful. I've grown this slowly over the last 2 years. I tried not to spend too much money on it because I didn't know what it was gonna look like. I think another thing is definitely take classes if you can, or try hand building. You don't need a wheel to do any of this. You just need a bag of clay and somewhere you can fire it. If you can't fire it, there is tons of air dry clay, and I see people make beautiful work with it. It's what you make it, it's not what other people thinks it has to be. This is my setup, this is what works for me. If there's anything on this process that you want to know more specifically about, I'd be happy to share that. I am hoping to go more in depth on each of these areas because I don't want this to be an hour-long video. And to be quite frank, I don't know that anyone's gonna watch this. So if you're out there, hi. If you're a fellow potter like me who has a home studio, if there's anything that you do, I'd love to know. Or if you have any advice on how I could make this better, I'm very very open to the feedback and to knowing what other people do. A lot of my inspiration has come from other YouTube videos and has come from other Instagram videos, and just kind of making my tweaks on it. And I've seen a lot of really cool stuff out there. It's New Year's, and so I'm hoping for a really good year in terms of pottery and self-exploration and, you know, really just diving into this as more than a hobby. And so I hope you're here along for the journey. I hope that there's many more videos along the way. And if you want to see more fun, follow me on Instagram at @theclayberry. I look forward to many adventures. This is my first video again, so please be patient with me, and I hope this turns out okay and I actually post it. Bye!